thank you for doing this. This is the first one we're doing not at the home oven, which is pretty cool.
In front of a Rationale.
Yeah, a much nicer oven than the shitty one I have at my house. So I wanted to start off asking you first of all, what do you do?
Yeah,
introduce yourself a little bit.
I'm the general manager here at Little Moss Restaurant, at least for the next 2 weeks. I've been here for 5 years. Started out as a server, was hired the day before the COVID lockdowns. And then that was an interesting time. I stayed employed, just working in the kitchen with John and Lisa doing takeout, just trying to do whatever we could to keep our hands busy. And then when we reopened, I was a server. And then pretty quickly I was promoted to general manager here. So my first general manager position was here at Little Moss.
Nice. So what was that like? Just kind of getting thrown right into GM right at the start of COVID, which was certainly not a easy time.
Yeah, or like right as we were coming out of it, essentially, I was made GM. So it was about rebuilding a team. It was such an interesting time. Like the industry reset in quite a lot of ways. Like people were kind of in the hustle for so long before COVID, and it was just kind of a system that didn't change. And then we came out of it, and a lot of people left the industry. It wasn't super hard to rebuild the team, especially here because of the way that we do the fair wage fee. Just the culture here makes it kind of a more inviting place to work than I feel like a lot of other restaurants. And we also tend to retain talent and people for longer. I haven't worked in a ton of other restaurants, but I've been in hospitality for a long time, and seeing that turnover is something that we don't experience super often here. Saying this as I'm about to leave too.
Yeah, but I mean, you've been here 5 years, so I feel like everybody here has been here quite a while. Brandon's been here a while. Arini has been here 3 or 4 years. Danny, similarly. So it's from my past experience, we're constantly turning people over. So here it's a total change of pace. So you get promoted to GM right when you're kind of coming out of the lockdown, doing all that. What have you learned over the past 5 years? Like starting from you're literally a server, just kind of coming in first. Was it your first management experience?
My first management experience, yeah. I'd been a supervisor at Castle Hill Inn or for Newport Restaurant Group in the summer of 2019. And it was short because they have a pretty short wedding season. So I worked weddings and large events like that in a supervisory role. But this was my first management role. And I was really lucky to come in to this role specifically because John and Lisa really gave me so much room to tailor the role to my strengths. I wouldn't say I'm the most number oriented person, or I like systems, but I'm not great at building them. I've been a much more intuitive manager in general. And I think that has its strengths and its weaknesses, but being given the space to figure out what I'm good at has been super helpful. And going into my next role, I feel incredibly prepared to do it because of the space I've been given here.
And what is your next role?
I'm going to be the beverage director at Claudine. So a new restaurant opening in Providence. A couple who met working at Per Se. They have been working on this restaurant opening for 3 years. And we'll be opening next month. So
super exciting.
Yeah, really, really exciting. My role here has also been beverage director, but I've also had to wear a lot of hats. So I'm really excited going into this role, being able to kind of focus on one thing a little bit more, have a GM to do kind of the more overarching stuff. And then I can really just build a wine list out. They've already started with probably 100 different bottles, but I have room to kind of apply my personality there. And then I have a lot of cocktail experience that I've gotten through here, which will kind of, it'll come in handy, but the bar program is going to be a lot less. So we're only going to be doing a few different kind of one-in-ones. So spirit soda type situation, and then classic stirred cocktails, martinis, Negronis, old fashions, things like that.
Nice. And I know you said to me before that the menu back here, we're always working on it and kind of changing it, especially with just the seasonal produce. It's always changing, week to week, just always. But you said to me that the wine list out there in the dining room is that's your menu that you've kind of curated. So how do you go about curating a wine list that's not just drinkable and enjoyable for like your average person who's going to have a glass of wine, but also like interesting and exciting for somebody who's maybe a little bit more like into wine.
Yeah, I think that is the area where I've grown the most since I've started working at Little Moss. I knew about wine as in I like to drink wine and I like cocktails, but at this point, our wine list is the biggest it's ever been since I've been here. We're about 40 bottles long. We don't have a ton of storage, so I'm kind of limited by that. And figuring it out has been a journey. At the beginning, it was kind of just things I thought were cool. And I was really helped in this whole time at Little Moss by our really great distributors and reps for these companies that come in and they taste me on things. And that's how I've really been able to gain an education. And like, for example, I've grown a lot. And like when I came into this role, I really didn't like Chardonnay. But what I've also learned is Chardonnay is such a neutral grape that you can really do so much with it, depending on who's making it, what part of the world it comes from. So now I'm a huge Chardonnay fan, and it also pleases our guests. So a lot of people just come in, they don't know a lot about wine. They don't know a lot about wine, and we want the list to be accessible. So I want someone to be able to come in and just be like, I want the bottle, or I want the glass of Chardonnay, and we can say yes without them even looking, because that happens a lot. It's like someone will come in, they won't look at the beverage list. They're like, I'm going to have your house red, house white. I'm like, well, we have a couple of those. So like, tell me, like, guide me in what direction. Do you like oaky? Do you like not oaky? Is it, you want to like something chilled, something not, something bubbly? So it's really about like the dialogue, the continuing dialogue that we have with the guests that helps me build the list. And we have lots of regulars here, which helps me as well. Because if I have someone coming in twice a month and they mention to me that they don't really see anything that they like, we have a guest that is very particular, and they didn't like my wine list in the past, and I've really tried to put on bottles, but they won't even look at it, and they just bring their own wine, which is fine with me. We charge a corking fee. You can't please everybody, but between my reps and the customers, they teach me about wine, and then my approach to it is not super formal. I just want it to be a fun conversation between us and the guest. And wine at the end of the day is food too. So what pairs best? And I've learned a lot about pairings working here as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So you're doing all these tastings all the time, constantly, and talking to different reps, wine from different places, different regions, different countries. So how do you then, take this list of wines that you've put together? Like, when you're tasting them, are you thinking about the food while you're tasting it, or are you just thinking about the wine and then food comes later? Or?
I'm definitely thinking about the food and keeping it in mind. We're here at Little Moss, like the menu follows a general structure. So I think the food that I come back most often to is oysters when we're in tastings, is because that's the thing that you start the meal off with. So we love tasting champagne and like crispy whites and that kind of thing. And then other times where I'm keeping specific dishes in mind, that's more geared towards when we're doing maybe a special event with a set menu. Because day to day, like I can have specific suggestions, but I don't really go down the menu like thinking what I have in mind for each dish. It's kind of, and since the glass list maybe changes up week to week, like here and there, I always have new stuff and new pairings that I can go to. It's a fun conversation to keep going.
So it's more about like, do you enjoy the wine itself? And just kind of thinking about the wine, not so much like, oh, this is going to pair really well with the beets and carrots. Like you're kind of just like, is this a great wine that I enjoy?
And then recently, like with the crudo dish that we have with the jalapeno, it's a very easy pairing, like spicy and Riesling. It's my favorite thing to eat with spicy food, like spicy Szechuan food. But that's something that I will, if someone gets it and I have time, I'll like go over with a little taste and just be like, try this with this. And that's a fun little detail to add to service, especially when people are sitting at my bar. If they've had a glass or two or had a cocktail and they're getting low on their other drink and I just want them to have a little bit of something, I'll just pour them like maybe 1.5 ounces of something to drink with it.
Yeah, I think you did that the other night for me and Sayana, because I ordered the steak when we came in to eat, and then Sayana ordered the rigatoni, and then you gave us like a little pour of it was
Brunello, because was it the sample bottle? It might have been the Brunello that we got, because that would have gone really nicely with that. And then also the Sangiovese. That's another steak wine. Like, we like to keep a couple fuller bodied reds on the menu. We call them dad reds.
That's funny.
Because like people just want like a Cabernet like sometimes, but being able to find like a more interesting producer, maybe something someone hasn't heard of before, that's kind of where our sweet spot is with the wine list. Like introducing people to familiar grapes, maybe done in a different way, not super funky, but just a little bit different.
It's funny that you call it like a dad red, because my dad pretty much exclusively drinks Chianti.
Yeah, that's a
like
dad red.
Yeah, he just loves Chianti. Every time I go over to his house, like that's what we're drinking.
Yeah, dad reds and mom whites. I tend not to use the term mom whites quite as much, but then to go back to the Chardonnay thing, the reason I didn't really like Chardonnay is because the women in my family mostly drink Chardonnay out of a box, cardboard Bordeaux. So like starting drinking that kind of like closed my mind off, but since I've been enlightened, and Chardonnay and Riesling are now probably my favorite grapes, on the white side at least.
Nice. Yeah, Chardonnay is probably my favorite. I grew up with my mom's white was like Pinot Grigio. That was just always in the house, and ate a lot of Italian food growing up, so it was always Pinot Grigio. And then Chardonnay, I don't love like a super oaky Chardonnay. I just love how like clean and like saline-y it can kind of be. Like that's just kind of been my favorite white for sure for a while now.
Yeah, like a Chablis. Like that's a very straightforward, very zippy, drink it as cold as possible kind of wine. And then the California Chardonnays get more into like Leah, one of my friends and good rep for Vineyard Road, she likes to use the term like slutty when it comes to California Chardonnay, especially when it is like super oaky, like a Rombauer or something like that. And it's so funny. We had this wine from Vincent Wine Company in Oregon. He's actually been here to the restaurant. And he makes one of the most delicious Chardonnays I've ever had. And it has that oak on it. So like I use this really funny like line with some of our guests sometimes where it's like, so this one, the Rombauer, like if you know that wine, they use the most oak out of anybody in the industry. So this wine is like Pam Anderson in Baywatch. And then the Vincent wine, very like refined. I'm like, this is Pam Anderson now, like beautiful with no makeup. Not that they weren't both beautiful, both versions.
No, but
of her,
just different.
But they're just very different. Yeah,
that's a great analogy. Yeah, I was going to ask what you meant by slutty, but now I get it. Like just like the spectrum. Yeah, that's really hilarious. So going from wine back to cocktails, how do you put together? I have two questions about cocktails, but we'll start with just like how do you put together a cocktail? Like what's the process like?
So we are a classics bar. I don't really like to reinvent the wheel. My predecessor was great at that. Very like he would love to experiment with things, and then we had some other bartenders that loved coming up with original cocktails. But my brain doesn't really work that way when I go out to a cocktail bar, unless it's like somewhere that is like world renowned or something for like a signature cocktail. But we here, at least the bar program now, gravitates towards classics, martinis, old fashions, Negronis, classic shaken drinks like a daiquiri or a margarita. And we just try to like turn it up to a 10, like do it as well as you possibly can. So I think one of the things that will outlast or like hopefully will be a part of my legacy here is my like the martini set that we do. So classic like 3-to-1 martini, so 3 parts spirit, 1 part vermouth, stirred very cold, and then put into a little martini glass with a sidecar on ice on a tray, because a martini needs to be drunk as cold as possible. If it's in a big glass, you have like maybe 3 or 4 minutes to drink it before it's like no longer
and it's like a lot of alcohol,
and it's a lot of alcohol. So if you want to enjoy a martini over dinner, it's better to have like a little sidecar of something kept cold. So that's me turning a martini up to a 10, and then like an old fashioned, simplest thing that you can possibly do. It's just bitter, sugar, and spirit, but make it as cold as possible. Put it over a big clear ice cube, put our little stamp on it, have a nicely cut garnish and a good cherry, and
doesn't really get much better than that.
It doesn't really get much better than that. And then you use a good base spirit too. One of the philosophies that I've had here at the bar is I'm not super into name brands. Like we don't carry Tito's. I like to carry just one vodka St. George from California, I find it's a great, just neutral spirit. And vodka is meant to be neutral. So people have so much attachment to brand names, and I've been trying to kind of tear them out of it a little bit.
Like Jack Daniels.
Yeah, Jack Daniels. I have Maker's Mark because I think it's a good product, but I don't really see the need to carry Grey Goose and Stoli and Tito's and all these other different types of vodka, even flavored vodkas. I would rather just make a syrup if I don't want to have citrus vodka because I have tons of citrus around all the time. So it doesn't make sense to have both those on hand when, especially when my inventory or my space to keep inventory is so small. I want to keep it as straightforward as possible.
Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that you are kind of approaching cocktails from a cook's point of view, where it's instead of having 5 different types of steak, let's just have one really good steak and some great sauces that we can, fluctuate, with the syrups being the sauces and, the spirit being the alcohol. So you kind of already answered my second question on cocktails, which was what makes a really great martini.
Yeah.
That was the next one, but you just went right into it, which is perfect.
And putting a little bit more thought to it too, like a martini, being thoughtful about the gin, your vermouth proportion, how much of having a good twist and how much of expression of the oils, because I like a twist on my martini. Sometimes I'll do a twist and olives if I want a little snack at the same time, but really what makes a good martini is having it be as cold as possible. And dilution sometimes is a good thing. We stir, so we dilute our martinis, but a famous martini that I've never had is the Duke's Martini in London, where they just keep bottles of frozen gin and frozen glassware, and they will rinse the glass with vermouth, chuck it, and then just fill the glass with colds, ice cold spirit right out of the freezer. And then they limit them to 2 cocktails per guest because it's just straight booze. We should probably have a 2-limit cocktail per guest, but I've only really seen someone get 3 martinis maybe once or twice in the whole time that I've been here.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of booze. Yeah. But
it's 2 or 3 shots per martini.
Yeah.
Approximately. So if you have 3, it's 9 shots.
Yeah. So our current martini is 3 ounces of spirit and 1 ounce. So it's 1.5 standard pours. But yeah, having a 2-drink limit with that one would probably be smart. But to have those kind of rules, someone has to break it in the first place to have a reason to institute the rule, and we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't have to add that extra line to the menu, thankfully.
So staying on the topic of beverages, what makes a great espresso? I know you have worked at a coffee shop in the past, so talk to me a little bit about coffee.
So that was actually when I first started here at Little Moss. I was working for Scuttlebutt Coffee Company, which is here in Paden-Aram, 100 yards from us, and I was their first employee. And espresso is also, to kind of go back even further, what brought me to Paden-Aram in general. I was in my last semester at UMass Dartmouth, and I had this class where we had to write a journal entry on pretty much anything that we wanted that we found in the paper. So I found an article on Farm and Coast and Little Moss because the businesses are connected by the same family. And I was living up the street at the time, and I walked down. I saw this beautiful La Marzocco double group head. I didn't know what this was at the time. I just was sitting on the counter and it was so beautiful. But a double group head La Marzocco Strada espresso machine, and I saw it sitting there, and I was I'm going to learn how to use that. So I just applied for a job, and I got the job. And then that machine also followed me here. And we recently got rid of it, and it's very sad that it's gone. But it just wasn't conducive to service. So what makes a good espresso is good beans, from a good roaster, hopefully that the beans were sourced sustainably. People are getting paid well for the beans wherever in the world that they come from. Making sure that the grind is correct. So when you're working at a coffee shop, at least a good one, the first thing that you do in the morning is you calibrate your espresso. So you will pull a shot, and different coffee shops use different ratios. So what we were using here and what I used as a barista was a 2-to-1. So you put in 1 part of dry espresso, you get out 2 parts liquid, and then you want it in a certain amount of time. So you want it to hit that sweet spot of extraction, because say your grind is too fine, it's extracting way too much of the flavor out of the coffee. So you're going to get this really bitter, concentrated, not very pleasant shot of espresso. And then in the opposite direction, if your grind is too coarse, you'll get kind of this watery, thing that like isn't great. So you're looking for that middle like ground of like great concentration, good flavor, making sure that it's not too bitter. And then people's like wine, like some people might prefer like a very dark roast classic Italian bean. I prefer kind of a lighter roasted bean, which tends to get a little bit more acidity, and that's not some people's thing, but that's what I prefer. So that's what I think a good shot of espresso is.
Nice. Yeah. Great answer. So again, kind of going back to cocktails, sort of, and not really. So the way that you were talking about cocktails, I said it was kind of similar to a cook. So you know how to cook for sure.
Yeah.
And so coming in to your role as GM, it's a front of house role, obviously. But why is it so important for a GM to know how to cook and know how to taste?
I think because it needs to be a dialogue between the front of the house and the back of the house. And we take feedback directly from the customers. So we need to be able to translate that and know how to fix it, or at least how to like give good feedback to the kitchen. Because if I didn't know how to cook and I didn't know how to taste, like that would be a lot harder for the kitchen to be able to be like accessing the thoughts of our guests. So like I've like gotten things where it was barely touched. I come back and I taste it. I'm like, this is what's wrong. We need to fix it right now. And then in the development process of dishes too, the way things are plated, like we have small tables. So one of my things is I try to, sometimes we get a little carried away with like amount of dishes that we're using for one plate. Like I try to avoid a side plate of something as much as possible because we're very kind of bistro style in our tables. So having that, like being able to give that feedback. And then I think just from like a respect point of view, like I think it's great for me to be able to cook because you guys are able to come to me and you respect my opinion on something, and I'm giving constructive feedback because you like trust that I know what I'm talking about. So in general, I think it's super important for front of house to have back of house experience. It doesn't happen a lot because front of house is more of a performative role that people maybe don't necessarily devote their entire careers to, like back of house does. But this is my whole career. So I think it's important for me to kind of jump in anywhere possible. I've cooked back here on the line. I'll shuck oysters if I have to. I've never worked pasta station, but I can make pasta if it was an emergency.
For sure. Yeah. I think that's a great answer because it's tough you can't make good food in an echo chamber. Like nobody has perfect taste. So, and we're always, it's a small team back here, but we're always tasting things constantly. So it is nice to be able to like take it out there and know that at least someone in the front of house is going to like have an opinion on it and not just be like, oh, hey, that's good.
Yeah, that's good is the worst like answer because you're never, because you can never improve something. It's because there's always like the things that come out are great, but there's always something maybe a little different that we can do. You can always keep tweaking something.
Always be tweaking.
And then like, I think it's like Thomas Keller, who's like, if like you can never like reach perfection, it's only something you can strive for. Because once it's perfect, it's actually not perfect anymore.
Yeah, and I love that. That's like the core of like kind of how we do it here, because like we're constantly coming up with new dishes, constantly having fresh produce come in. We're making things up. We're kind of doing things we've done in the past, but maybe we don't actually have the recipe. We're just kind of doing it from memory. So it's like we need to refine it because at the end of the day, someone's paying money for it. So like we don't want to do something that's like over the top creative just because it's like fun to be creative. It has to be like good. Like and somebody that's going to come here for dinner would order and eat it and enjoy it.
I'm trying to remember what restaurant it was. Like it was one of the chef's table one. It was, I think it was Tragro, and maybe it wasn't them, but it was like a restaurant like them, 3 Michelin stars, and they said that they don't have any recipes written down. Like it's just cooking is like this instinctual thing. When it comes to baking, like you should probably have a recipe written down. But when you're getting in new things every day, like it's cool to have a team where you can just give someone an ingredient and they can make something that tastes good instead of like being like so regimented, and it allows room for a lot of creativity. So we have base recipes, obviously, but on a day-to-day basis, like you have to adjust here and there because maybe like this ingredient tastes different than it did yesterday. So you have to add more of this, and it's about the constant tasting. And,
or even just like the pasta, like, hey, it's winter time right now, so it's really dry, so we need to add more egg, like an extra egg yolk, or maybe 2 extra egg yolks, which are like 20 grams each. So it's like, well, that's 40 extra grams of liquid you're adding. It's pretty significant. But then now we're in spring, and now the recipe is like perfect.
Yeah.
Because that's probably when the recipe was made. But then you go into summer, and Danny's like, well, in the summer, it's always, you have to add a little bit more dry. And it's like, it's just constantly changing day to day. So I think that is a great way. I think arpege too.
I think actually arpege is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, because I remember they're like, we don't have recipes. It's like they're just getting fruit and vegetables in off the truck every day, and then they're kind of just like, well, what can we make with this?
Yeah.
Like, how to make a tart shell, but so it's like maybe something standardized like that, or like here, like our ricotta cheese. Like, we're not really changing the way we make ricotta cheese because it's delicious and it's just, that's like the base, but we always are changing what goes in the ricotta.
Yeah.
So it's like, or what goes on top of the ricotta. I've come here before and it was the tomatoes.
The tomato is my favorite one.
It's delicious.
Of the year.
Yeah, literally just ricotta.
So simple.
What is it? Ricotta, olive oil,
salt, sherry vinegar,
and just
a little bit of torn basil.
Yeah, super fresh.
Yeah.
Tomatoes, and then fresh sourdough bread. It's like, it doesn't really get any better than that.
That's the best time of year.
Even just the set we've been doing in the winter with like just the honey and sage, little black pepper.
And really good olive oil
really,
is the key to that.
Exactly.
And going back to the tomato one and tomato time of year, that's one of my favorite things, like being in the front of house and seeing someone who maybe hadn't had like a peak season tomato, because it's a different food. I love seeing that. Like for even a tomato, a properly made martini, like when someone maybe was like, oh, I don't like this, but it's because they had like the Stop and Shop version of that produce, which isn't even the same. It's not in the same species. Like, and that is what is so incredibly satisfying about working in front of house, is like having these beautiful ingredients and seeing people maybe discover them for the first time. Super satisfying.
Yeah, I can't wait to have my dad come here for dinner when we have the tomatoes, because he's like one of those people. It's like, oh, I don't really like tomatoes. They're kind of, doesn't like texture on the inside. Yeah, but it's like, well, have you actually, like, when was the last time you had like a garden fresh, really, really nicely grown tomato? Still have to have him come in here.
Yeah, and greens too. We've been getting beautiful greens recently. Like, we're just so lucky with the quality of ingredients that we have around here, which is what, like, another reason I feel so lucky to have been at Little Moss for this long. Like, make those connections with our farmers who make all this possible.
I can't wait to do some podcasts with the farmers. That's like, I remember when I got here, it was kind of right around the time I think I got here in late December, and I started the podcast like right at the beginning of February. So it was like kind of right around the same time. And I just looked at our list of farmers and I was like, well, these are just, I want to talk to everybody, because it's like, it's just, you get to pick their brain about, what their process is, what makes a good piece of produce or a good vegetable, why they do the things they do. I think the first farmer I'm going to do one with is Eva.
Yeah.
And she's like a legend around here.
Eva is like a complete legend. Invented like this style of farming around here. And then Dan King would be a great person to talk to over at the King Farm. And Bill and Dee at Ivory Silo Farm. They also run an organization called the Freed Seed Federation. I think it's like a seed saving bank. And then we've done events with him before where he comes and we just feature his produce. And like he talks about each one, how they grow them, like why they grow them, why it's significant, the history of these plants. And those events are some of my favorite that we do. And then we need to have a party for Eva at some point, because she keeps saying that she's going to retire. And then she just loves the work so much that she's still showing up in her van with herbs and daffodils ramps and all that beautiful stuff. Ramp season was super quick this year.
So quick. We had it for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like maybe 2 weeks. It was like a week and a half, because we did the ramp pesto, I think, twice on the ricotta dish. And then we had it briefly on the new asparagus dish. And then it was like gone. And now we're doing like a cilantro pesto, like just something different, which is still good. But like that ramp season was just
So short.
Yeah. I kind of wish we like preserved some, like pickled some ramps or something, just so we could have it going into the next couple, like just having it in summer or keeping it for winter. But maybe next year.
Well, we still have spring onions. Like that's what I'd really like to do with the ricotta at this time of year is like spring onion, because it's my favorite things to have right around now. Because that's another thing that's a different food than what you can get in the grocery store. Like these sad little spring onions that you get, slimy, like no life to them. And then these ones come in and they're huge. They're like huge. They almost look like baby leeks. Like it's insane. And the texture, like you could make a whole salad just out of that. Like that would be a cool set to do.
For sure, on the ricotta. For sure. And just to put it in perspective for people listening, like you think of a scallion that you get at the market or at, Whole Foods or something, it's like, about this big, maybe like 6 to 8 inches, and they're tiny, like about the width of your pinky, maybe if you're lucky. And then the ones we're getting are like, thick, super thick, and I had to
quarter size, like in diameter, yeah.
And I had to cut the tops off of them to get them in a 22 quart. And 22 quarts are like, how big are they? Like 3 feet, 2.5 feet? They're huge. So they're just ginormous, like dinosaur-sized green onions. And
they look like they came from another time. They're getting more oxygen than the ones at the
and more nutrients.
Yeah.
That's why I really want to do one of these with Danny too, because he knows so much about. He worked for Dan King, right? Yeah, for 6 years. And he knows so much about the micronutrients and the macronutrients and what all the deficiencies, like he can look at a vegetable and cut it in half and be like, well, this one's, deficient in boron or some really niche thing. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. But then watching him, gardening with him on the roof, I'm like going out of my way to make sure I'm doing it with him so I can like learn some of what he knows, because he's just incredibly knowledgeable on gardening. And
that roof garden is such an asset to us in the summertime too. So much nasturtium, we put it on like everything. And then the mint right now is peppermint. So I've had a little bit of trouble with like juleps aren't supposed to be made with peppermint. So it's not really cocktail peppermint. I'm not exactly sure what to do with it, but I don't know if you guys are using that on the crudo right now.
The peppermint?
Yeah, because it was cilantro and now it's mint on the crudo dish.
Oh, I wasn't here the past 2 days.
Yeah.
So I didn't
that's right.
even know it changed. Yeah. But that's how fast it changes here. Is it's like I took 2 days off.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, something is totally different now, and that changes the whole flavor of the dish.
Yeah. And then with everything changing, like, I mean, it's a part of the job that sometimes I'm like conscious about how much paper I go through. Because like I'll reprint an entire night of menus just for the change from cilantro to mint on one dish. Word. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you need to print menus like, we have guests coming in at 5. You have to print them at like 4:50 or something because we're just changing it right up until service. And then it's like, okay.
I've gotten better at like, because it has been my job to kind of like force an answer to those kind of things. Because especially if I'm involved in service that night, whether I'm bartending or serving or hosting, like in that last hour, I need to be getting other things done besides printing menus. Because it's not just printing a menu when a new thing goes on. It's changing the button. It's updating the price. It's making sure like the proper mods are on there, like all that stuff. It's not just like just adding a menu item. So sometimes like, especially for brunch, if I get in and there's like 3 items and I have an hour to prep, like that's like a little bit more than people might expect is going into that on the back end. And then also explaining the dish to the front of house staff. But we're also lucky in that a lot of our staff has been here for a while. So those are easy changes, and dishes tend to like go away and then come back. So it's not like a total reinvention of something or just a totally new dish a lot of the time.
For sure. What are you most excited for just like moving into your role at Claudine?
I'm so excited for the separation of my roles, because it's been so like fulfilling and informative to have all these different hats. But sometimes I haven't been able to like focus on one thing maybe as much as I would want to. And then in this new role, like running or curating a bottle list of 300 different bottles, being active in wine service, but not being like serving food. Like I am just having a dialogue about wine. And then the learning that comes along with that, because so Josh, the savory chef and owner, along with his wife Maggie, who's the pastry chef, he doesn't have a formal culinary school education, but he worked at Per Se for 6 years, and I think he the sense I get is that he appreciates that maybe I don't have the formal training, and it also gives me room to grow into the role. So I think that they're very excited to kind of foster that growth in whatever way that they can, which will start with me going to Per Se for a stage at the end of the month.
Which is so exciting.
Yeah. I'm going to feel like as soon as I found out about it, I was like, am I like cousin from the bear now?
Yeah, like you're going and
very
going to be out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, but so exciting because those. I'm not going necessarily to like emulate anything. It's just to get a sense of like the world that is out there in dining. I've always wanted to go to Per Se, and the French Laundry is obviously a bucket list item on anybody's restaurant list. So I have a feeling I'll be going to New York a lot more and learning from the best in the world. Because we wanted to move to New York, but this was just too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Yeah, especially around here. And it's not in Boston, per se, no pun intended. But it's, we're 45 minutes from Providence, so it's really not too far. But a restaurant like that, because it's a tasting menu, right?
8 courses, yeah.
Yeah, so a tasting menu opening up in Providence is pretty exciting because there's not really any restaurants doing tasting menus in Providence.
So it's just like Persimmon does a la carte. They also have a tasting menu option. And like there's a couple in Newport that do tasting menus. So I think it's... there's one at Castle Hill Inn at their dining room, and then there is a new one, I think, Audette, that just opened, and then Aurelia is the one. So I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 in all of Rhode Island.
It's a short list, though, for sure.
There's a short list, yeah. And Rhode Island is such a vibrant, like, concentrated food city. I lived there for 3 years, and like I definitely missed being there, and I'm excited to get back. I love it here, but just... being able to go out for a walk like in the evening and maybe hit like a wonderful cocktail bar, and then you could like restaurant hop and have like something here and something there. I love Boston, but for me it's just a little bit too spread out, and the restaurant scene is exciting, but I think Providence is just like on a different level for that. And you wouldn't expect it. I mean, maybe you would with the culinary school there at JWU, but like it is amazing the quality of the restaurants there.
Yeah, it's a small state. Like I definitely didn't. I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts, but I didn't really go to Rhode Island very much growing up, so I didn't really think about it much. But yeah, it seems like the culinary scene is kind of blooming nicely, which is nice. I feel like it's going to be a good change for you for sure, especially going from like village life for so long to going back to living in the city.
Yeah, and leaving my whole like slew of people that I've come to know over the last 8 years. But thankfully, our Providence is only 40 minutes away, so I'll have a lot of people follow me out there, and I'm not going into a new city with no network, which I think is another huge strength for me in that position. Is I have people like I know a lot of the restaurant people around the city, the restaurants that I really love, and so it'll be a really exciting time to become a part of that community, and then bring some new people into it.
For sure. So going back to you kind of cooking and enjoying that, where does your like love of food and hospitality come from? Like where'd you get that spark to know that you wanted to do it as a career? I
think I've always been a big eater, as a kid, especially. And then my grandmother loved to cook, and her sisters, she has a lot of sisters, and they were always, they published, wasn't like for the public, but we always had the Sullivan Girls cookbook around our house that they wrote and then would give out to family members. I really loved to bake when I was a kid. I remember one of the recipes out of this book, it was a tomato soup cake. So you use Campbell's tomato soup as kind of like the sweetener to it. And it may sound like gross, but it ends up tasting like a spice cake, like a carrot cake or something, because it's that kind of flavor profile. My mom, not the best cook. My dad, like meat and potatoes type of guy. But I think I'd always kind of had that interest in food and in restaurants. I remember for Christmas, I think I was maybe like 6 or 7 years old, they got me like a kid's version of the Emeril Lagasse like pans. I think they returned them like right away because they were so cheap. Like, and
That's funny.
like I just remember getting them, and then years later I was like, whatever happened to those? They were like, oh, we just returned them like right away because we weren't that interested in having them around and just like cluttering up the kitchen. And then my like kind of arc in hospitality is going back to Castle Hill. I worked there for a summer, but it was also the first fine dining experience I ever had right when I graduated high school. And that was like, I went with a couple of my best friends at the time, and we had a tasting menu. And just like the choreography of the service, I found super new and exciting. Like having your silverware changed and your water glass filled without you even realizing it. The like kind of theater aspect of it. And then in college, I went to UMass Amherst, and I worked at the Lord Jeffrey Inn as a banquet server, like kind of higher end weddings. So I didn't know a lot about food or wine at all then. And I still didn't after I left, but I knew a lot more about service and the theater of it. And then working at kind of more corporate places, I worked at Olive Garden and Texas Roadhouse. Those are my first like real restaurant serving jobs. And then I kind of progressed from there, just like really loving to go to restaurants and wanting to be a part of that world. Oberlin in Providence was probably one of the bigger like inspirations for me to go into the industry at this level. I remember going there for the first time with my roommate Garrett in Providence, and like us fighting over the dessert and us just like getting so into like what was going on. It was like they've expanded since then. It's a very large, beautiful restaurant now, but it was such an intimate space, maybe 40 seats. And then, eating around Providence, going to New York, eating, just seeking out kind of new experiences. And loving to eat is really what brought me here.
Yeah, I feel very similar because growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I was like 20 or 21. But like it seems so obvious now, but my whole life, like I just loved eating. Like that was it. When I was like, a young kid, I would literally eat until I would throw up like 3 times a week because I was just like, I just wanted to keep eating. Like, and my stepmom actually said, she was like, if you ever become a chef, like you are going to have a real fucking problem because you're just going to be fat and you're not going to be able to stop yourself.
Well, you're on your feet all day, so that helps.
It does balance out a little bit.
And sitting, which happens for a lot of people.
Yeah,
like,
no, but that's definitely a challenge. For sure, like I have to consciously stop myself from like eating and like finishing what's on Sayana's plate because it's like I will just keep eating. Like
because it's just like the most fun activity you can possibly do. Recline, fill your face. It is so much fun,
and it's satisfying, and especially when it's good food too. It's really, really hard.
Eating a work of art, you can't eat a painting, but you can eat like
I put a painting on a wall. But I definitely prefer to eat it. But that's like we came here the other day to eat, and we came and we're like, okay, we're not going to go crazy. It's like every time.
Of course you're going to go crazy.
We can't help it. Like we're like,
especially if you're going to get stuff. Because I think you guys came in and you're like, oh, we're just getting like appetizers or something. Or you might have said that. I don't know. But you're like, oh, we're not going to go crazy tonight. And then, like 3, like good amount of appetizers, the steak, the fish, right?
I had like 3 glasses of wine. Yeah, just went crazy.
But that's what going out to eat is about. It's about indulgence.
Especially at places like this, like sometimes you go out just because you're like, I need to eat something real quick. But when we're sitting down here, we're all dressed up. It's like
sustenance or entertainment. And going out for me, I would much rather like dinner is the show. I don't go to dinner and a show unless it's a very special show. But dinner is usually the show for me, no matter where I am. Like if I'm traveling, like that's where I'm not like if I'm in Paris. Not that I've ever been to Paris, but if I go to Paris, I don't want to see the Eiffel Tower. I just want to find the best restaurants and sit in those restaurants. Like I've seen plenty of the Eiffel Tower in pictures. I don't need to see it.
I feel completely the same. Like we're planning our honeymoon right now and we're going to go to Japan. And I was just like, well, I want to go to this restaurant. I want to go to this sushi place. I want
ramen,
to go
sushi.
Ramen. Yeah, I'm just like that. And Sayana's like, this isn't like, we're going to like hang out and like we can go sightseeing. I was like, what's the point? Like what's the point of sightseeing? A little bit because we're going to, but it's like that is the show. Like that's such a good way to put it. It's like dinner and a show. Like I would rather, instead of paying for a meal and paying for a show, I'd rather just go and like have an incredible meal because that's like going to really stick with me.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, for sure.
At the higher end, like the Michelin experiences that I've had, like they've been fantastic, except for one of them. I went to like a Korean steakhouse in New York, and the food was fantastic. It was just like the vibes were like not the show that I was looking for. Because in a Michelin star restaurant, like you expect to be taken care of in a certain way, like, and up until that point, I'd like always been taken care of in a way that I really expected.
Yeah, that's tough, especially with like the Michelin Guide kind of giving out stars a little bit easier. It's like stars don't mean the same as what they used to, especially when you're at like a 1-star place, because a lot of the 1-star places, the food is exceptional, but the service is like kind of an afterthought, or it's a little bit. But sometimes that's okay. Like I'm not saying that it's an afterthought at the Four Horsemen, but it is a more casual restaurant and like places like that. But I love places like that. But when you're at a place and you expect it to be like really, really nice service and really nice food, and then you go and it's kind of just like the service is total afterthought. Yeah. Food's great.
At that level, your server should never be weeded. Yeah. Like they should be exuding calm. Like, because I want to be calm in that dining room. I don't want to be like, well, oh my God, they're going like grilling at this table and they're taking an order over there. Like that's not what that experience is about. So I still have a lot more Michelin exploring to do, especially in New York, and it's so close that like we're lucky enough to be able to get down there a good amount.
What's been your like favorite Michelin experience that you've had so far?
Saga. That's where Kurt and I got engaged. First of all, the most beautiful dining room I'd ever seen. So it's on the 63rd floor of a historic Art Deco building in the financial district. We're also having our wedding there, so that's super exciting, being able to have Michelin star banquet food, because I've worked at like nice banquet places, but the food is like, I mean, when it's that many people, when you're doing a wedding for 250 people, it's hard to really dial in and make, like, dishes are good, but they're not like the highlight of the night. And that's one thing that we really wanted to do with our wedding is make the food the highlight. And that's all I want to do. Like, again, dinner is the show. So we're not having a ceremony. It's just going and having a dinner, toast, that kind of thing. And then when we got engaged, that meal was absolutely fantastic. I think it was 8 courses. They don't drop a menu. They give you a menu at the end as a memento. But probably the best caviar dish I'd ever had. I tried...
what was the caviar dish?
So it was like I think it was like a tamago. It was some kind of like egg in like this very airy custard and lots of caviar on the top with like these little salt and vinegar potato chips. They had a black bass dish with a carrot puree that was awesome. The desserts were fantastic. By that point, Kurt couldn't eat anymore, so I ended up eating the desserts. And then the wine, we got a wine from Domaine Noack in Champagne. Again, like I probably drank most of that because we had gone out for drinks earlier, and Kurt can have maybe 2, and then he's chilling. But then when you get there, they give you an aperitif, and then I got a martini, and then we had the bottle of wine. And then what else stood out at that meal? It was the Wagyu. I'd never had Wagyu before that because I was waiting for the right opportunity. I just like didn't want to like go to like a random place that like wasn't known for their culinary skill,
like Texas Roadhouse,
or their sourcing of ingredients. But I knew if we got it there as a supplement that it would have been like, and it was truly really excellent. In that dining room, the service, everything was so beautiful. And the view, Kurt had the view out the window. I had my back towards it, but they have like balconies all around that you can go out at any time. And that was really cool.
I definitely want to go check it out.
Yeah.
Just like the way you talk about it is like very, I can tell that it definitely had an impact on you.
Such an impact, yeah. And then they have Overstory too, which is a little bit more accessible. It's the cocktail bar right above. So it's a part of the James Kent restaurant group. So they have Crown Shy on the bottom floor, which I think has 1 star. And then it's Saga, which has 2 stores, and then Overstory, which is like probably a 25-seat cocktail bar, again with the terraces all around. And then they have the private event like salons that we're having our wedding in. So that place was great. I've been to 11 Madison Park and sat at the bar.
When it was vegan or?
When it was vegan, yeah. And it like the food again, like so delicious, and they were so like generous. I went there kind of not knowing what I was going to do because a friend of mine got me a seat at the bar who used to be a captain there. And I went with a friend of mine, and they gave us a free round of drinks. And then like I wasn't sure if I was going to eat because I also was going out much later for a dinner reservation at Laser Wolf in Brooklyn. So we ordered one tasting menu. We figured we'd each have a bite, and then they just gave us an extra one, which was really, really nice of them. And then I felt bad because they wanted to do like the dessert service. I got like the pretzel which lived up to the hype. But then I had to scoot out of there because I had to get all the way to Brooklyn. And I pull up to this other restaurant with the little like 11 Madison Park granola bag. And then the funniest thing about that granola bag was the day after when I got home here and I watched the menu for the first time, and then they make the granola joke in there, and I'm like eating the 11 Madison Park granola on my couch while watching the menu.
You must have been like, oh my gosh, they can see me
they're
right
talking
now.
about me.
Yeah.
Is this fucking play about us?
That's so funny. So funny. I think that it's great for people in the industry, whether you think Michelin star restaurants are cool or not. It's good to go eat at them. Like it's like research, like
you
genuinely.
need perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. And I like to not like, I've only been to these restaurants a couple times. The restaurants that I really love are like a place like Sailor in Brooklyn. It's April Bloomfield's restaurant. And like that restaurant is incredible. I feel like it shares a lot of DNA to what we do here. Just kind of familiar, classic things done really well with really great ingredients. Very kind of hometown bistro vibe. And Chef Bloomfield has also been like super nice. The first time I went there, I like asked if she was in. I asked to meet her, and I was actually, the first time I went there, I was on a date at the time, and he convinced me to ask. He was like, well, if you don't do it, I'm going to ask for you to meet her, and so you're going to have to do it. And then I finally did, and then as the waitress was going to go see if she was free to chat for a second, he's like, oh, Shannon's from Little Moss in Dartmouth. I was like, they're not going to know what that means. And then the waitress comes back out and it's like, oh, Chef April would love to meet you. So I went back and she told me that she had been here for brunch like a couple years ago, and that she loved it. And she like gave me a hug and asked for my email address. I never got an email, but I'm like, she's very busy. And then the last time I was there, which was just a few weeks ago, I met her again and we chatted for a couple minutes, and that was fantastic. So that's another restaurant I love in New York. And then there's like Wild Air, really like beautiful wine bar. Contra, their sister bar, which is probably the best cocktails I've ever had. Going back to the cocktails that we were talking about earlier, like signatures, this is one of those bars where I'd order a signature cocktail because they're very like science and development oriented. Mm-hmm. A lot of the cocktails are developed by Dave Arnold, who invented the Spinzall, like this culinary centrifuge that we have here. So they incorporate a lot of kind of modernist techniques. The centrifuge, liquid nitrogen, hydraulic presses, like all this like crazy stuff. And then they also have another restaurant called Brass, which is a very kind of like fancy brasserie type vibe. And then even going to like New York staples, like going to Balthazar and just like watching the crowd is so cool. Or going and sitting at the bar at Bemelman's, the Carlisle Hotel, like bars and restaurants. You just go there to get a sense of New York in the sense of like, it's like the best city in the world for restaurants. So 100%. Go feel it out.
Yes. So you've said a couple times during this, and something I've noticed about you is you really like classics.
Yes. Yeah.
So where does that come from? Like, why do you like the classics, and what's important about that?
Because I think they're classic for a reason. Like, and they're open to endless interpretation. You can always refine something. So, for example, at this restaurant Brass, which is part of the same group as Wild Air and Contra, they have a like roast chicken, but their roast chicken is like a whole chicken roulade, that everything is completely deboned. It's stuffed beautifully with like a potato puree and like classic flavors, but maybe done more elegantly. So classics are always like, that's what's fun about them, is they're open to endless reinvention and interpretation. Not reinventing the wheel, but going back to that idea of nothing can ever be perfect. So why don't we give it a shot?
Yeah. And I think classic like flavor pairings, like rosemary and thyme and chicken. It's like, you're right. It's a classic for a reason. It's like, that is something that is just so delicious. Every time I have chicken, I feel like I smell rosemary and thyme, regardless, even if it's in it or not, because it's just like, it's what I think of. So how do you curate a vibe in the dining room? I know we've talked about that just one-on-one before a little bit. Just like it can kind of be your own and you can put your little touch on it. So how do you go about creating a vibe in a dining room that's not where people are comfortable?
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing, the first thing that comes to mind is lighting. That's super important to me. So candlelight, firelight, the Pinot lamps that we have on the table. So when I got here, we had just candles on the table. We would use the overhead lighting. We'd adjust it all the way down low, but it was still too bright for me. Like there's this old, I don't know how old this joke is, but like I've seen it around where it's like a GM like finding the correct lighting for a dining room and they turn it down, and then the lights just turn off and they're like perfect.
That's so true though.
So like I want the lights to be as low as possible, but the lamps are great because you can see the food. And then another like thing that goes with my lighting is I love the joke where it's like, you're in a gay guy's apartment and you can't see shit. There's no overhead lighting on. Like before I leave, I know I'm not going to get to do it, but I wish I could tear out this track lighting with my bare hands. Just like take it down because it's so aggressive. You don't want to feel like you're on stage when you're at dinner.
It is very studio.
Yeah. The only appropriate overhead lighting I've ever seen was at, I mean, there's been a couple places, but the one that stands out to me was Le Coucou in New York. So they're a 1-star, and they, like, their ceilings are so high, but they have like these pinpointed lights that go right to the center of the table, so soft, like there's no light in your face.
When you said lighting, the first thing I thought of was when I was at Oscar. What blew me away about the dining room is it's 10 tables and black paint, black floors, black tablecloth. Everything's black in the room, and the lighting just kind of hits the table from the top. It's like top-down lighting. And it really, because it's a open kitchen, so you're like in the dining room while you're cooking, and you like look like you're plating and whatever, and you look up into the dining room, and it really is like people are kind of just floating in this nothingness, like this, like they're out in space basically, and then their table is like just this plane of existence where the food is like brought to them, and the lighting like really was stunning.
Yeah, you put the food on a stage,
right?
So whether it's like very direct, like overhead lighting. Ours is very indirect, so it just kind of goes everywhere. But the lamps are really good for that direct lighting. And then adding other things. So like the candlelight from the bar, like we kind of just turn off that backlighting on the bar and we just have candles up there. So the bottles are kind of illuminated. And then when we get to it, having the fire lit outside, even though no one's actively using the fire, the smell of the fire, the seeing it reflected in the window adds to the vibe. Music is super important when it comes to curating a vibe. So, and it really depends on my mood every day, and it can really be anything. It can be like Patsy Cline one day. It could be like Peggy Goo the next day, and like house music or like jazz or like if I'm like feeling cheeky on like a brunch service, like just pop music. But you want to kind of adjust it to the clientele that you have. I feel like I get most compliments when I'm like doing oldies because we have an older clientele here. But even our younger clientele can appreciate when I put like Johnny Cash radio or like Frank Sinatra or Patsy Cline or all these like kind of like standard restaurant feeling playlists. And then, so music is a big thing. And then pace of the dining room too. I think obviously staff goes a long way in curating the vibe. And if we're having a good time, everyone else it rubs off on. And you never want someone, we get busy, but you never really want to show that you're like anxious or overwhelmed or weeded. Because then like it's very obvious to the guest and people come out to eat to relax. So, you want to be relaxed. And then going back to, we want to be happy too. We have a good time coming to work. That's the kind of culture that we like to build here. And if we're having a good time, it's very noticeable. And that goes a long way. I'm trying to think of anything else for the vibe because it's lighting, it's staffing, it's music.
Well, I think it's also like you've said before, it's like you can't teach taste. So you kind of like, I feel like it's very hard for someone to create a vibe if they don't really have good taste. So like, how do you develop good taste, and how do you get to that point where you're confident in being like, I'm going to play this song right now because it's just, you're just feeling it. Like,
I think it's something ingrained, and it's like just loving to go out to dinner, loving to throw a party. Like some people, I find a lot of joy in hosting a dinner party, and that's essentially what my job is every night. I like to do it at home, obviously, but like at the end of the day, that's what I've chosen for my career, is to throw a party every night and to make people happy. And that isn't something I think you can teach. It's something that you can, like, as long as you're open to it, you can absorb it. But like my taste, I think, continues to get better, but that also requires me to go out and see what other people are doing. I feel like every time I go to New York for a week, I like change the layout of the menu because I saw something, like I'll keep the same assets, the same font, the same illustrations, but I'll like move it around to make it more readable, or like I think that was a good idea, so I incorporated in, or like a step of service that I might add, or like verbiage that you use when you're greeting a table. And it's a constant like distillation. Again, just keep refining, and because it's an endless, like very joyful process to keep it going.
So like genuine interest definitely plays a big role. Just like, and I think that also kind of comes across in the kitchen too, because if you're going out to eat and you're just eating and then leaving and you're like, oh, that was good. Like it should be like when you're eating, you're looking at the plating, you're thinking about the flavors. Why is it on the plate like this? You know, what time of year is it? And kind of taking it all in. And then over time, that taste kind of develops. So kind of similar to creating a vibe in the front of house, but taste is like your little secret weapon. And
I've always been told, even ever since I was a kid, that I have champagne taste and beer money. That's what my family would say to me. So I'm striving for the champagne taste and champagne money. And thankfully, in this industry, I don't have to have champagne money to drink champagne all the time.
Very true.
So I end up like, that's a great thing about this, is it's a hard lifestyle. It's super challenging, but it's so rewarding. And then you get to live in a way that a lot of people don't ever get to experience. And you get to give that experience to other people who are lucky enough to be able to go out to eat or have these experiences with us.
Why do you like green chartreuse so much?
Yeah, I discovered it here. Not a very versatile cocktail ingredient because it just goes in a couple classics. But I guess there's something to be said about the scarcity of it and why I like it so much. It's the best shot you can possibly have because it'll burn, but it's so complex. And then just the conversation that you can have around it with your guests, like introducing them to chartreuse. It's like introducing someone to the idea of a Negroni, but with chartreuse, the fact, like, I love that it's made by monks who don't care about capitalism, and like there's all this demand for it, but they won't make any more because like what they have works for them. And it also, I think, applies to like the world at large. And I wish that more of the world operated that way, where people would reach a saturation point, or companies or whatever, and they can take care of the people that make it without need for endless growth. They've like found an equilibrium point that I feel like doesn't exist in our culture a lot of the time, which is an unfortunate thing. And then, having my 2 bottles a month, I feel special to be able to get those.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I remember we learned about it a little bit at school when we did our little front of house program. And it's kind of like medicinal in a way, because wasn't that the original?
It is. That was the original intent of it. And then there's also this, the chartreuse makes, I think it's like less than 10 products, but the core ones are green and yellow chartreuse. Then they make like aged special versions of those. Those are called VEPs. And then they have a couple different sommelier versions, or like versions for like they have one called the 9th Centenary, which is like the 900th anniversary of the Carthusian order, I think, in Grenoble. They also have another product here. It's called Vegetal. And in French, I don't know how to say it in French, but it's called the Elixir of Life. And they just sell it at French pharmacies, and you take a spoonful of it, and it's supposed to be medicinal in that way. But it's easier to find the green chartreuse. So if someone finds it at a liquor store, it's not going to replace it, but you can definitely like pepper it in and use it like bitters in a cocktail. So I haven't gotten to really play around with it too much. It's also really great in hot chocolate, just a couple drops, because chartreuse and hot chocolate is one of my favorite like wintertime après-ski type drinks. But if you want something that has the flavor of chartreuse that isn't going to like knock you out, like a little bit of the Vegetal goes a long way.
It's almost like there's no hallucinogenic aspect to it, but it's like a psychedelic beverage. Like when you when you drink it, it's like it initially hits you and it's just that burn, but then it kind of like, it just blossoms into this flavor that isn't really like anything else. Like it really is
super unique.
Its own and just crazy and it after you swallow it, it keeps kind of changing in your mouth. Like it's a intense flavor.
It was so interesting coming off of dry January and having my first little sip. Like I put it in like a Glencairn glass, put like half an ounce and just kind of let it sit on my tongue. And it was like, it's kind of like that sensation. I know you've never smoked, but like having a cigarette for the first time.
I've had one cigarette my entire life, but that's it.
But I've been a smoker, and then like I've quit for a long time, but like occasionally I'll have one, and then each time it brings me back to having the first one. And it was kind of like that with the chartreuse. Like it lets you see it in a different way, like not drinking it quite as casually, because I'm probably one of the more casual chartreuse drinkers out there just because I have access to it. I'm hoping I have the same access at the next place. Hopefully we can get some more of the special editions, but I have to probably have a better connection for that. Because you're allocated, so we're allocated 2 bottles a month of each, and then when they're able to get like the special editions, sometimes we're able to get those as well. But then there's like large format chartreuse bottles that I think are like 4 or 5 liters that they had at Le Coucou in New York when we went and we got a chartreuse service, and I have no idea how to get those bottles. I think you probably have to go to France or like know an importer or something like that. So that's something I want to figure out at the next job. Because at Le Coucou, you go in, it's this bar that you don't sit at. It's just a counter. And like the centerpiece of the bar is just like 4 giant bottles of chartreuse.
Badass.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first times I came here, you gave me like a little taste of this clear alcohol. And you were like, tell me what this tastes like to you. And I was trying to put my finger on it, and I was like, it's, kind of nutty and but like savory. Like I couldn't put my finger on it. And then it was the Doritos.
Yeah.
That was like the craziest thing. And I was so embarrassed that I couldn't put my finger on it because I like love Doritos. Like growing up, that's my favorite chip, and I could not put my finger on it because I've never had it in like a liquid form.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was such a funny thing. It was like months of lead up to it too, because the spirit company that makes it like teased it, and then it was like it took a couple months to be released, and then I was able to get a bottle. I'm still mad that I didn't get like the beautiful box that it was supposed to come in. But that I never sold one drink out of that bottle. It was just what we did with you, just to see the look on someone's face when they realize what it is, or when they taste it, it's like, this is weird. And then another thing with the Doritos is when we went to Brass in New York City, I went with a couple friends, and I went with Kurt, and our table wasn't quite ready, so we all had a drink at the bar, and our bartender was awesome. And we saw like another spirit from the same company sitting on the back bar, and we were like talking about the Doritos thing. He's like, I think we have a bottle hanging around somewhere. He didn't go and get it that moment, but then when we got to the table, like right before we ordered appetizers, he brought over 4 shots of the Doritos and like bought our first round of drinks. And that was like, I mean, that's one of those things where you really love hospitality, when someone goes out of their way to just like make you laugh. Because it really just takes only a little bit of extra effort to really hear what someone's saying and then go off of that and make their night super memorable.
Yeah, and it takes one moment. You don't have to do it with every single course, because then it kind of gets obnoxious and almost like ass-kissy. Mm-hmm. But it's like, just, like one special thing that just, it's exciting.
Yeah, the Doritos thing, that's so funny. I forgot. It was Cam still here at the time? Yeah, so he liked, like we wouldn't tell you what it is. Sometimes I would just be like, here's the Doritos, because they'd see me pour it, but like Cam and Nikki love to like pour it and then be like, guess what this is.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
it was
really fun. Mm-hmm.
So outside of like your job, so you're starting Pop Coast, which is like your supper club.
Yeah, and that was actually, I might have to put it on ice because of the move. Because like really, even at that first one, like I had plans to do it all summer because I thought I was going to be living here all summer. And then this thing just like fell into my lap. So either I'm going to keep doing them at my apartment in Providence. We'll probably move there sometime next month. But like, I definitely can't do one this month because my last day is the 25th. It was scheduled for the 27th. And like, that's going to now be my going away party here at Little Moss. So
yeah. Which is kind of sad you're putting it on ice because it was so good. But now I feel like honored that I was at the one.
I want to do it again. So it'll have a revival, and I'll do it more consistently. But I might have to change like the concept just a touch. But I want to host people in my house more. Like that's the whole idea of it. And then, I mean, thankfully with this first one, now I can even like I want to take Thanksgiving away from like that responsibility from my like family. Now I want to do it. Now I can seat like 14 people at my house with like the tables and the chairs that we bought. So if anything, it like made me much more able to throw dinner parties because I had to buy some materials to get that off the ground.
For sure. And I think your love of classics really came across like on the plate because it was 5-course tasting menu.
5 courses, yeah.
Yeah. So you want to like walk people through what you serve?
Yeah. So it was a green toast, which was something that was inspired by a green toast at Sailor in Brooklyn, the April Bloomfield restaurant. So it was a ramp and pistachio pesto, just with a ton of cheese. So essentially a cheese course too, with the bread that we make here at Little Moss. That was one of my favorite dishes. And then you punch out the little discs, and then the next day I use it for egg in a hole. So nice. That was another classic. And then it was a vichyssoise with a huge scoop of caviar on it. That was the second time actually I made vichyssoise. And like we're getting into cold soup season, and the caviar was just so great.
Oh, it's delicious. That might have been my favorite course because it's a soup, but you served it with these long, really thin potato chips.
Yeah.
So it kind of was like a soup at the end when you're eating with a spoon and everything, but it was also just like the best, kind of sour cream and onion dip with potato chips you possibly could have. Like that was really delicious.
A really fun dish. And like in the process of that, like I did a private event with kind of a practice of this menu, a catered event at somebody's house. And then I did it, and the original potato chips were just a little small like discs. And this time I did the long ones because I thought it would be fun to have more of like a communal like thing on the table, and then you can dip with them. And then I realized like, I don't know why I don't make potato chips more. They're so much better than the ones that you can buy. And then it's so satisfying to be able to like, be like, oh, I made those. So we went from the vichyssoise to a English pea risotto with Benton's country ham. That one, in the first iteration of Coast, the private dinner party I did, I made farfalle, which was my favorite dish of that one. And then the risotto ended up being my least favorite dish of this one. I think it was not dairy heavy enough. And then I thought the rice was going to hold a little bit better because I purposely undercooked it and then kept it warm, but then it just hydrated a little bit too much. The flavors were still there, just not the best dish of the night. And then the roast chicken, which like I think is a standout of that with the farce stuffed under the skin. I love roast chicken. I practice with it all the time. It's like one of those things that like seems so simple, but I mean, it's going to end up, if you want to make a roast chicken, it's going to take a couple days between brining or whatever technique that you want to apply to it. And that had a very, very reduced chicken jus with sherry, a sweet sherry, and a sweet potato pave. The first time I did sweet potato and potato, I much preferred the just plain sweet potato one. I thought that one was great. And then a classic brownie sundae with vanilla ice cream and Harry's berries.
Yeah, it was a great meal. It was delicious.
And then finding like the choreography, especially if you're doing it all yourself, like doing the service, cooking the food. It's such a fun challenge to like, because the timing of it, as long as your prep is good to go, then like all the work is done. I always think of like there was the PBS series, Mind of a Chef, and I love the Gabrielle Hamilton episodes, and I love her book, but she talks about like brunch at Prune and how like if your prep needs to be done, because if you can't go back down halfway through a brunch service and make French toast batter, like you're going to sink the whole ship. So like prep is the most important thing when it comes to cooking or doing anything really, dinner parties. I learned a lot from that, and I'm excited to do one again. It might not be as soon as I thought it was going to, but we'll get there.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. You know, you're getting practice. Like I have my own little, you know, business thing, and I was doing like culinary classes, experiences, whatever, because it's not so much like classes. It was more like, you know, the pasta class, I'd bring a bottle of wine, we'd all be drinking wine, making pasta, and then you get to eat it at the end. So it's like, that was really fun, and I did like 3 of them just for like family, friends, really just doing it for free, and haven't really marketed it or like spent a lot of time, because right after that I started working. I got the sous chef job and I was working a lot more. But I think it's good to just like get reps, like literally just like do it, learn from it, and then next time you do it, you have that knowledge.
Yeah, you got a framework for it. And then eventually, like, I would want to have my own restaurant. So like practicing that and getting a little bit more experience developing dishes, like the way that I would want them served down the road. I mean, this is probably going to be 5-6 years down the road. It's opening this new place, and then probably the eventual goal would be to move to Thailand and have a restaurant in Bangkok in a high rise, just like small. That's how I envision it, at least at this point. Classic kind of bistro food, but in a very luxurious environment, but not too stuffy.
Of course.
That's the end goal.
Yeah, not too posh.
Uh-huh.
That's exciting, though, going to Thailand in the long term.
Yeah, I've never been. My fiance's from there. And from what he says, the food scene is like unlike anywhere else. They have the Michelin system there. And not that that's my end goal. I think the sweet spot for Michelin 2 is a 1-star, because there's not too much pressure. Never want to be a 3. Like a 2 would be fine. But 3 requires, I think, almost a level of like unhealthy obsession with the work. Because I just read Marco Pierre White's book. It's Devil in the Kitchen. And I mean, he's a brilliant guy, but that life, so hard on himself and just hard for him and his family. And that life in general, I'm sure it's shared with a lot of chefs. Like, it's not something I ever want. I want dining. It's just dinner at the end of the day. That's what we like to say.
Yeah. I think it can be a lot at that top level. You know, there's a reason there's only a few of those in the world. There's not a ton of 3-star places, because it's just that level of intensity. It takes a special type of person to get there, and then once you're there, it's like to retain it is. I think Marco Pierre White also said that. He said like getting 3 stars that was his goal, but then retaining it, he was kind of just like, well, now what? And
he got out pretty quick, like from what I remember is. I mean, you win a gold medal at the Olympics, and then you're kind of set. You don't have to go back the next year.
Why am I doing this now?
Yeah,
Yeah, but I've always had that. He's like my goat. Like he's my favorite chef, and it's always because I love Michelin-starred restaurants and all this stuff. But I've always loved how like pimp it was of him to just like work like that, get 3 stars, be the youngest to ever get 3 stars. And then kind of just really be so self-aware to be like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? I don't want to do this anymore. And then being able to like give it up.
Because at that point, maybe you're giving it up in that way, but you also have so much respect that you can live now a very full life and go to any restaurant in the world and actually like enjoy the craft that you've committed your entire like professional life to. So yeah, that must have been a good spot for him to be in, like enviable, definitely. But the kitchen life that he led up until then, not so much.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a little too much.
And that's an old school like philosophy too. I feel like kitchens and the idea around like chefs at that level has changed quite a bit. Like I'm sure there's still abuse in kitchens, but it's not that level of what it used to be.
Ducks getting thrown at you. Getting, knives, pans.
Well, that first like scene that he paints in the book with the cheese cart, and because a wheel wasn't half full, he took all the cheese and threw it at the wall, and because it was so ripe, it just stuck. And then, as like they went to clean it right away, and he's like, "No, you're gonna look at it and think about what you've done." And then they go through the whole service with like just the cheese like rolling down the wall. Like that wouldn't fly, I don't think, nowadays. I mean, I don't know,
HR would get called. You get pulled in the office. Chef, you can't do that.
Yeah,
it's not the same as it used to be. But I think that's probably for the best. I think more people are in the industry than ever, and I think people are starting to be like, okay, it's not how it used to be. So, kind of takes down the barrier of like fear a little bit. I'm sure there's still stuff going on. I've seen some crazy shit for sure. I'm sure you have as well, but. yeah, I don't think it's to the same level as throwing cheese at a wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Force it. Or like, was it? I think it was also Marco Pierre. Didn't he like cut up somebody's? Something was wrong with their uniform.
Oh yeah, and cut the uniform. Yeah, put a bunch of holes in it and made them wear it for the whole service.
Yeah, like the public humiliation type thing. It's kind of a thing of the past, thankfully. But that's
it's effective for him at the time.
Effective for sure. Yeah. Well, I don't really have anything else. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, this was fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for talking to me. I really appreciate it. And I know you're going to do fantastic things at Claudine and whatever your future holds.
And I'll be back around. I'm glad I'm staying relatively local. So
yeah, you can come and eat all the time.
Yeah, I've built such a community down here that all I'm doing is widening my radius. I'm not leaving. So that's how I like it.
I think it's a great move. I think it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be amazing.
Thank you again.
Well, thanks so much.